And he became the love of your life.
He became my husband
And he
and the
became
love of my life. Yes.
And he became the one who donated one of his kidneys to you.
He eventually saved my life by giving me one of his kidneys.
No cameras, no lights, no glitter, no screaming fans. Just one quiet moment, years in the making, and no one saw it coming. After Tina Turner passed away, the world wept. They remember her voice, her power, her fire. But as the headlines faded, one voice remained silent until now. He was the one closest to her heart, and what he shared wasn't tribute. It was personal, raw, and it caught even her biggest fans off guard. So what did Tina leave behind that no one expected? And why did he choose now, after her death, to finally speak? Long before the spotlight, Tina Turner lived a life full of silence and suffering. As a little girl named Anna Mae Bullock, Tina felt forgotten. Her parents, trapped in a toxic marriage, gave her chaos, not comfort. When Tina was just 11, her mother ran away. No goodbye, no hug, just gone. Her father remarried and left, too. Tina was abandoned twice. She was sent to live with strict, religious grandparents who offered rules, not love. She worked hard, sang in church, and picked cotton as a child. But what she remembers most is feeling unwanted. That pain stayed with her for life. Then came more loss. Her loving grandmother died. Then her half-sister, taken in a car crash. Pain kept piling up. But Tina never broke. She learned to survive, even when no one cared, even when no one stayed. Her life changed in one wild moment. At a nightclub in St. Louis, a teenage Tina grabbed a mic and stunned everyone with her raw voice. Ike Turner noticed. He gave her a new name, Tina Turner. And just like that, a legend was born. But this new name wasn't a gift. It was a trap. Ike trademarked Tina Turner, so she couldn't leave him. She was now part of his act, and under his control. On stage, Tina was electric. She danced like lightning. She sang like thunder. But off stage, she was scared, trapped, controlled. Behind every show was a woman trying to escape. The costumes covered the bruises. The cheers drowned out her fear. Did fans ever notice? Or was her pain hidden in plain sight? The Ike and Tina Turner review looked like a dream, but it was built on a nightmare. Ike controlled everything, money, music, and Tina. And behind closed doors, he was violent. She was beaten, humiliated, isolated. Even when pregnant, Tina was not safe. Still, she performed. Still, she smiled. Still, she danced. But each show was a silent scream, a cry for help the world didn't hear. Fame hid the truth, and Tina carried it alone. In 1981, Tina Turner did something no one expected. She told the world the truth. In a shocking People magazine interview, Tina revealed everything. The beatings, the threats, the control. It was raw, brutal, honest, and it shook the world. This was the queen of rock and roll, and she had been living in fear for years. Her courage helped change how the world saw domestic abuse. It wasn't just something that happened in silence. It could happen to anyone, even a superstar. She feared backlash. Would people still see her as strong? Would Ike come after her again? But Tina stood tall. She chose to speak, and millions listened. When Tina finally left Ike in 1976, she had nothing. No money, no home, no rights to her own music. All she asked for in the divorce was to keep the name Tina Turner, the same name Ike gave her, the same name tied to pain. But she made that name hers. She cleaned houses, lived on food stamps, slept on couches, took every tiny gig she could find just to survive. The world had forgotten her. The industry had moved on. But Tina was just getting started. She worked in silence, rebuilding, reinventing, preparing. She switched up her sound, embraced rock, pop, and power. And then in 1984, she released Private Dancer. Boom! The world stopped. Tina Turner was back, and bigger than ever. With hits like What's Love Got to Do With It, she became more than a comeback story. She became an icon of resilience. She wasn't just Ike's ex. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a force. She didn't just reclaim her life. She redefined it. But even after all that success, Tina kept one final chapter hidden. Until after her death, when her husband, Erwin Bach, broke the silence. What he shared wasn't about the fame. It wasn't about the money. It was about peace. That Tina wasn't just a muse. She was a survivor in plain sight. And years later, when she told the world the truth, the world was shocked. In 1981, Tina Turner did something that changed everything. She spoke out. In an interview with People magazine, she revealed the truth, the abuse, the humiliation, the control. She told stories no one could believe, like throwing hot coffee on her, forcing her to watch disturbing acts, beating her even when she was pregnant. At the time, people didn't talk about domestic abuse, especially not famous women, especially not black women. Tina's courage changed that. Experts said her story gave power to women everywhere. It proved that anyone could be a victim, even someone as strong and famous as Tina Turner. But speaking up wasn't easy. She feared backlash. She feared people would only see her as a victim. And she feared Ike would come after her. Still, she stood tall. She gave interviews. She told her truth. And when one interviewer tried to play Ike's voice in 1993, hoping for a reaction, Tina simply said, "I have nothing to say." That moment said everything. Her story was later turned into a book and a hit movie, What's Love Got to Do with It? But Tina didn't want to be known just for her pain. She wanted to be known for her power. And over time, that's exactly what happened. In 1976, Tina Turner finally walked away from Ike. She had 36 cents and a gas station credit card in her pocket. That was it. She gave up everything in the divorce. The houses, the cars, the money. All she asked to keep was her name. Tina Turner, a name given by her abuser. But now, a name she would reclaim. She had to start over completely. She cleaned houses. She slept on friends' couches. She used food stamps to survive. From world tours to washing dishes. That was her reality. But she didn't quit. She took any gig she could find. She sang in Vegas lounges, did game shows, commercials, whatever it took. People in the industry thought she was washed up. They thought she couldn't make it without Ike. But Tina was just getting started. Behind the scenes, she was working harder than ever. She changed her style. She mixed rock with pop. She pushed her voice to new places. She wasn't chasing revenge. She was chasing freedom. Tina didn't want to just survive. She wanted to win. And she wanted to win on her own terms. In 1984, after years of struggle, she released the album Private Dancer. And the world listened. Hit after hit. A tour that packed stadiums. A Grammy-winning comeback that no one saw coming. Tina Turner wasn't just back. She was bigger than ever. She had rebuilt herself. Not as someone's sidekick, but as a legend. Her story wasn't just inspiring. It was proof that starting over isn't the end. It's the beginning of something even greater. By the time Private Dancer was released in 1984, Tina Turner had already survived what many wouldn't. Abuse, bankruptcy, and being written off by an industry she had once helped energize. But rather than return quietly or nostalgically, Tina staged a comeback so bold it redefined her legacy entirely. Private Dancer wasn't just a solo debut, it was a reinvention. Backed by a modern production team, the album fused pop, rock, and soul in a way that felt both timeless and ahead of its time. Its lead single, What's Love Got to Do with It?, reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and earned Tina 3 Grammy Awards, including Record of the Year. At 44, she was older than most female pop stars being pushed by major labels. And yet, she was just getting started. The success of Private Dancer shocked critics and the public alike, not because Tina lacked talent, but because the industry had largely decided her time had passed. In a youth-obsessed business, she shattered expectations. With spiky hair, a leather miniskirt, and her trademark gravel-edge vocals, she didn't just return, she stormed the gates. The album went on to sell over 10 million copies globally, transforming her from a nostalgic name into an international icon. Was this Tina's ultimate act of defiance? A reclamation of everything she'd been told she couldn't be? Powerful, relevant, and in control? The private dancer era also marked a stylistic and visual reawakening. Gone were the matching costumes and tightly choreographed routines of the Ike and Tina Revue. In their place stood a woman unfiltered and unbound, drawing on pain not as limitation, but as fuel. Songs like Better Be Good to Me and I Can't Stand the Rain weren't just hits. They were declarations of independence, each lyric echoing years of resilience. Even her performances changed. They became more rock-influenced, more personal, more raw. For Tina, success now came not through survival, but through complete self-expression. In hindsight, Private Dancer was more than a commercial victory. It was a cultural shift. Tina Turner had crossed industry lines, racial boundaries, and ageist assumptions to become one of the few black women to dominate both the pop and rock charts on her own. Her transformation wasn't just about music. It redefined what a comeback could look like. And in doing so, she became a symbol not of reinvention alone, but of ownership, of her voice, her name, and her destiny. Turner wasn't just back. She was reborn, the healing power of Erwin Bach. Tina Turner's love story with Erwin Bach began not with fireworks, but with a quiet, unassuming encounter in an airport in 1985. At the time, Bach was a German music executive assigned to welcome Tina to Dusseldorf. She was 46, still redefining her solo career and not actively seeking romance, especially not after years of trauma and betrayal. But something about Erwin's presence struck her immediately. In later interviews, Tina recalled that her heart began to race when she first met him. Still, guarded by the scars of her past, she didn't let that feeling guide her, at least not at first. Their relationship began slowly, as a friendship that gradually deepened into trust. After surviving a marriage built on fear and control, Tina approached love with caution. Could she open herself to someone new without risking the same pain again? Her fears weren't unfounded. In her memoir, she admitted she was afraid she had been too damaged to love properly. But Erwin proved different, patient and unwavering. He never pushed her beyond her comfort. Instead, he offered something she had rarely known in her personal life: emotional safety. Over time, his gentleness helped her begin to let go of the old fear that all love must come with a cost. They remained together for 27 years before Tina finally agreed to marry him in 2013. By then, they had already built a life together in Switzerland, where Tina had become a citizen. The wedding, held at their lakeside estate, was intimate and elegant, with guests including Oprah Winfrey and Bryan Adams. But perhaps the most profound testament to their bond came in 2017, when Erwin donated one of his kidneys to Tina during her battle with kidney failure. She was deeply moved by the gesture, writing that she had been prepared to die rather than undergo dialysis, and his selflessness had given her life, literally, a second chance. Their relationship stood in stark contrast to the one that had nearly destroyed her. With Erwin, Tina experienced not just love, but healing. He never asked her to be anything other than who she was: flawed, vulnerable, and extraordinary. In her later interviews, Tina described their bond as true love, not because it was grand or dramatic, but because it was peaceful. He showed me that I could be loved without giving up who I am, she said. In the end, it wasn't just her comeback or her fame that defined the second half of her life. It was a quiet joy of being seen, chosen, and cherished for exactly who she was. Tina Turner as a cultural and feminist icon. Tina Turner's legacy extends far beyond music. She stands as one of the most powerful cultural and feminist symbols of the 20th and 21st centuries. Her life story, marked by abandonment, abuse, and eventual triumph, resonates deeply with women who have had to fight for their voices, their safety, and their place in the world. Turner didn't just survive domestic abuse. She redefined what survival looked like in the public eye. By choosing not to hide her trauma, she gave other women permission to confront theirs. In doing so, she reframed strength, not as the absence of pain, but as the will to rise in spite of it. Her unapologetic control over her narrative was radical for its time, particularly in an era where women, especially black women, were often expected to remain silent or submissive. In reclaiming her story through interviews, memoirs, and film, Tina became a beacon of feminist resilience. She refused to be defined by the men in her life. whether as a subordinate wife of Ike Turner or the aging performer the industry tried to dismiss. Instead, she carved out her own space, on her own terms in her own voice. Feminist discourse increasingly includes Tina as a case study in autonomy, particularly in how personal agency and creative expression can coalesce into activism. In popular culture and magazines, Tina is pictured as fearless, fierce, and defiant, endlessly and throughout her approaches to life, always being referred to and celebrated. From Beyoncé channeling her in Super Bowl performances to Angela Bassett capturing her on screen, Turner's reach extends over generations. Her story is taught as a tale of redemption, not merely a narrative about music's excellence. It has become a touchstone to artists, activists, and ordinary laywomen alike, especially those with abuse cycles, reinventing themselves or having public life burdens, such as ageism and the evils of racism. Even in her fashion metal mini dresses, wild hair, and unapologetically sensual clothing, Tina defied cultural standards that specified how a woman in her 40s, 50s, or 60s should appear. What probably guarantees her cultural impact most is that today's average day evokes her memories without linking them to songs, but with survival. From her own lived experience with society, the stigma associated with abuse, and the entertainment industry, she transformed ideals and envisioning of womanhood into something fierce, complex, and ever-changing. Even posthumously, hers remains an anthem for freedom seekers from relationships, from industries, and even from their own doubts. She broke down barriers, and she swept up the broken pieces and pranced on them in heels, inviting others to do the same. Role of Buddhism in Tina's transformation. Tina Turner's discovery of Buddhism in the 1970s wasn't loud or flashy, but it was powerful. It changed everything. At the darkest point in her life, stuck in an abusive marriage with Ike Turner, Tina was introduced to Nichiren Buddhism. She was desperate, broken, looking for anything that might bring peace. And so, she started chanting, Namyo Horengekyo. At first, she didn't believe in it, but she kept going because she needed something to hold on to, and slowly, something inside her began to shift. This wasn't just a spiritual practice. It became her lifeline. Tina began to feel something she hadn't felt in years. Power. Not power over others, but power over herself. She started to believe she deserved peace, that she didn't have to live in fear, that she didn't have to suffer just to survive. In her own words, I started to see that I didn't need to suffer. That was revolutionary. Buddhism gave her a system, a path, a way forward. And chanting became more than just a habit. It was healing. It was strength. It was the sound of Tina Turner coming back to life. As she rebuilt her music career, she was also rebuilding her soul. The world saw the performer, but inside, she was transforming into something more powerful than anyone imagined. Tina didn't keep it to herself. She spoke openly about her spiritual path, something rare for celebrities at the time. And because she did it without judgment, without preaching, without shame, people listened. She reached more than fans. She reached humans, especially women survivors, and anyone who had ever been broken down by life. In 2010, she released Beyond, a spoken word and music album filled with Buddhist chants from around the world. This wasn't about fame anymore. It was about peace. Because for Tina, Buddhism was an escape from pain. It was a way to face it and then move through it. She didn't erase her past. She rose from it. She didn't deny her trauma. She transformed it. Buddhism gave her the courage to tell her story on her terms, to love herself, to reclaim her voice, to come home to her own body. She once sang to packed stadiums. Now, she sang to her own soul. Her voice may have quieted, but her message is louder than ever. Tina Turner passed away in 2023, and the world felt the silence. But something strange happened. Even in death, her voice got louder. Tributes poured in. Old performances went viral. New fans discovered her for the first time, and longtime fans wept like they lost a friend. Then came the surprise, a posthumous track called Hot For You Baby. It had never been released before, but the moment people heard it, they felt her. That raw, gritty voice, the fire, the power. It was like Tina had never left. Critics and fans said it best. She wasn't just singing. She was reminding the world who she really was. Was this the only unreleased song? Or were there more hidden gems waiting to shake the world again? But it wasn't just the music that made people cry. It was her story. The Broadway show, Tina, the Tina Turner musical, took on a whole new meaning. It was already a hit, but now it became something deeper, a living memorial. People didn't just watch. They felt, they cried, they stood and clapped for a woman who had clawed her way out of hell and into history. New versions of the musical opened across the world, different cities, different languages, but the same story. A girl from Nutbush who became a global icon. And now, her life is being studied, not just on stage, in universities, in panel talks, in classrooms about trauma, power, and survival. Tina Turner's life is no longer just a music career. It's a blueprint for surviving abuse, for aging with grace in a brutal industry, for being a Black woman who refused to break, for choosing peace over revenge. In 2021, HBO released a powerful documentary called Tina. She called it her final word. She spoke honestly. It wasn't a good life, she said, but the second half was. And that's what she wanted people to remember. Not just the pain, but the rebirth. Now there's talk of new films, new books, new ways to tell the part of Tina's life that came after the fame. Because maybe, just maybe, the most powerful version of Tina Turner was the woman we saw after the spotlight dimmed. If Tina's story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories behind the legends. And if you're ready for what's next, click the video on your screen now. You won't want to miss it.